It's Monday, and that so happens to be the day that I like to talk about monsters. Hello, everybody. I'm Jeff Arbuckle, and this is Monster Mondays, presented to you by Film Seizure. You can catch new episodes of Film Seizure with myself and Jason Oliver on Wednesdays, but Mondays are for me to talk about monster movies. Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays for Monster Mondays. Let's talk about Elves. And you may be wondering, what could possibly be wrong with Santa Claus's Little Helpers? They have those cute little German outfits with the pointy hats and curled shoes with bells on them. And yeah, sure, sometimes they might want to be dentists, but most of the time they just want to help that jolly old fat guy make toys for the children of the world. I mean, this seems pretty wholesome for Monster Mondays, right? These guys bring cheer to the world. Well, again, kids, this is why Nazis suck. They ruin everything, even elves. And that's what this movie is about. Basically, 1989's Elves asked the question, what if what we thought were these happy little toy makers were actually some sort of occult demon that Nazis planned to use to create the master race? So, yeah, happy fucking Christmas, everyone. The Nazis ruined that shit too. But it actually gets a little worse. I mean, it gets really cringy in this movie. This movie comes from Jeff Mandel. He only directed 3 feature-length movies. Elves was the first, and you can see right out of the gate what he was going for. This was the heyday of cheap, independent action, suspense, and horror in video stores across the country. Elves is one of those movies made specifically to capitalize on a holiday theme. I mean, no duh, right? But what I mean is that this was done all the freaking time during the 80s and 90s. You're likely not going to get a movie about Nazi elves terrorizing a girl because of a very specific parentage starring the guy who was Grizzly Adams in the 70s. So that's what they did. They just made these movies for video stores to just have product, basically. And you'd be surprised how many of these little low-budget horror movies made a shit ton of money off of that business model. But let's talk about Dan Haggerty for a minute. Haggerty was mostly a character actor. He appeared in movies like Easy Rider, as well as a few other biker flicks. By the mid-70s, he got the role as Grizzly Adams, and then got that turned into a TV show, basically. It's what he's really mostly known for. It's basically what he's only known for. By the 80s and into the 90s, he was working on mostly direct-to-video movies after a 90-day jail sentence for selling cocaine. Most of the time, he didn't really look like he was having a great deal of fun on these movies. I mean, maybe that was just his persona, but he really didn't deliver lines with a great deal of feeling. He just played these tough guy roles that weren't, but they weren't really in these that great of movies, really. By the end of the 90s, Haggerty did return to the role that made him famous, but beyond Grizzly Adams, quite honestly, Haggerty didn't really do much of anything else of note, other than Elves. The movie starts with our main protagonist, Kirsten, and her 2 friends, Amy and Brooke. They are a small group of pagans who call themselves something like the Sisters of Anti-Christmas or some such shit. They go to do a ritual of some sort, but before the ceremony could start or end, Kirsten cuts herself and her blood awakens the most evil thing ever, a Christmas elf. She is slapped around by her old German grandfather for sneaking out into the forest where she was told never to go. And she's also, she's also fucking around with his old books of witch shit. So she gets worse punishment from her ridiculously evil mother, who says she's going to the bank and clearing out Kirsten's savings account for doing bad stuff. I mean, what's more is that while taking a shower later that night, her little brother spies on her so he can see her boobs. I mean, this is a really weird family, and it's going to get weirder. Kirsten's family life is bad. Her only friend is her cat, Agamemnon, and she has a shitty mall job. Now she has this elf after her, which looks more like a goblin more than anything, but whatever. While on break at her job in the food court, she and her friends decide to go fuck with Santa because, remember, Sisters of Anti-Christmas and stuff. But Santa is actually quite the pervert, and he likes feeling up Kirsten and asking for oral from her. While Kirsten's at work, her bitch of a mom drowns her cat at home because if it's not enough that she's the daughter of a Nazi and a total jerk ass, she has to drown a cat in the goddamn toilet of all places. Now, back at the mall, Grizzly Adams shows up and asks for a job. Now, thanks to Santa's indiscretions, Grizzly Adams gets to be replacement Santa, but for good measure, though, and a bit of nice karma, pervert Santa is stabbed to death in the dick by the elf. This opens up Grizzly Adams to take over as Santa at the store. Now, where the dead body is, Grizzly finds a bizarre carving in the ground, and even though he says he's no longer a detective, he still goes to the library with a copy of that symbol and looks in the occult section, which naturally is section 666. And the pages he needs are missing, but he at least gets the name of the person to go and see. Now, that night, the girls decide to throw a little party for themselves and some boys. With Grizzly no longer able to live in his trailer in the middle of nowhere, he's shacking up in the mall too. And the elf has been following Kirsten everywhere too, so he's there. To bring everything all the way around, some of Grandpa's Nazi pals are also after Kirsten. The Nazis kill the guys who are stuck outside from the party and break inside the store looking for Kirsten. Now, here's where things get real goofy. Okay, well, maybe even more goofy than they were before. The Nazis are after Kirsten because she is supposedly going to mate with the elf. This is some sort of prophecy about creating the master race or something. What makes Kirsten special is that she is the daughter of the mom who drowned her cat like a bitch and her grandfather. So, yeah, she's a product of incest. Considering her younger brother is all about seeing them boobies, clearly incest runs in this family. Now, Grizzly takes Kirsten home where her mom is a total bitch to everyone. Kirsten's grandpa does believe what they are saying about the elf and tells Grizzles that he has to help him. And he has to help Kirsten stay alive and so on. So he goes off to the local university and talks to the foremost expert on occult and biblical stuff. Grizzly then goes to another expert, but an expert in Nazis. So he goes and talks to this guy and asks him what he knows about the elves. That's what he said. What do you know about the elves? That's all you have to do. Just go up to a Nazi and say, what do you know about these elves? What about those? Ugh. Anyway, he wants to know the connection between the Nazis and the elves. He literally says that too. What's the connection, guy? Come on, Doc. What's the connection between these Nazis and the elves? Yeah, that's what he says. Nazi expert says there were two schools of thought. The first, the one that he didn't believe in, that they were captured and trained to be the most perfect assassins. The other, they genetically created elves to mate with a virgin to create the master race. Because, sure. The Nazis try to kill Grizzly Adams by blowing up his car, but he's too smart for these damn dirty rat Nazis. He goes to save Kirsten from the elf, and the elf kills Kirsten's mom, thankfully. Grizzly goes to talk to Kirsten's grandpa, and the grandpa tries to get everyone to basically kill this elf. Midnight that night, the elf will mate with Kirsten, and then everyone's buying a one-way ticket for Shitsville. The other Nazis come to rough up everyone and get Kirsten. They kill the grandpa and shoot Grizzly. However, I'm not sure if he's necessarily meant to die. I mean, he is seen briefly later, but he's still not doing so good. So I don't really know if they kill Grizzly Adams. I don't know. Anyway, Kirsten and her little brother escape and run through the forest. She gets caught by the Nazis, but the elf kills the Nazis. And the elf begins to... gross monster sex on her and stuff. And her brother gets back to their house to get the specific crystal their grandpa had that can kill the elf. And she uses the crystal to stab a hole in the elf, stabs the hole that the elf came out of, and then he just melts because whatever. Okay, fine. The elf melts. So let's try to talk about the things I like about this movie. This one's rough because it's a pretty bad movie, and an innocent cat was murdered, and I mean, there's incest, there's Nazis, but let's see what we have here. First, There's a lot of comedy in this movie, so much so that it masquerades so well as a horror movie that you miss the overt jokes. A couple of jokes I especially appreciate start with the mall Santa. The manager of the store that the Santa was at says that something about how something hasn't happened at the store, which is called Golems, by the way, in 50 years. So when Santa is found with his dick stabbed out, he tells the cop, this is terrible. Something like this hasn't happened to Golems in 50 years. So while I assume it is meant to say that Dead Santa has never happened to Golems since it's been around, and it's been around for 50 years, but I would also like to think that there has been Dead Santa before in Golems, like 50 years ago in the early 40s, Dead Santa. And it's happened again. Just hasn't happened in the 50 years in between. Like maybe Santa pissed off some pretty bad, somebody pretty bad in like the late 30s or the early 40s or whatever, and he got killed there. Like the cop, he just says, well, it's a sign of the times, like it was nothing. Another joke I quite appreciated was that Grizzly Adams comes home to his trailer home that's like parked out in the middle of nowhere. And it has an eviction notice on the door. Now, how the hell is he getting evicted from his mobile home in the middle of nowhere? I mean, that just think about that. That kills me. I mean, another great joke during the department store party, Brooke and Kirsten have a conversation in the sporting goods section next to a sign that says gift ideas for mom, which is hanging on a rack of rifles and shotguns. Also, special credit goes to the body outline in the Santa dressing room because it still has a greasy blood stain in the crotch area. Fantastic. Second, while punching a Nazi thug, Grizzly Adams says, "What are you, a goddamn Nazi or something? Is that elf yours?" I rest my case. Finally, this movie knows exactly what it is. A movie about a monster elf with Nazis at Christmas time. I feel like the entire script was handled in a very tongue-in-cheek way. I can't imagine Mandel took this very seriously. He probably just started spitballing ideas and started thinking that it would be pretty cool if it just, if the elves were more like trolls and that they were these evil creature things. And then he thought that Nazis were totally shitty, so throw them in too. Incest sucks too, and then he mixed in pretty scant characters and made the movie. Boom. Step 1, come up with a bad idea. Step 2, poorly make a movie. Step 3, profit? Anyway, that wraps up this week's Monster Mondays. Until next week, I'll see you later. And don't forget to check out new episodes of Film Seizure every Wednesday and a new installment of Monster Mondays each Monday on filmseizure.com. And also check out new posts at my website, bmovieenema.com, each and every Friday. I hope you have a wonderful holiday season.
Bye.